Hi, Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, here at CD Summit, Jenkins Days, Boston, and I'm joined by SVP of Sonatype, Matt Howard. Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Alan.
So, Matt, you know, our first day of the event is always workshops lately, and we're happy in the afternoon we have the Sonatype Heroes Tour. And a lot of people who may not be familiar on back home don't know what we mean by the Heroes Tour. Why don't you give our audience a little bit of background?
Well, it's really the Nexus World Tour, and the theme is sort of assemble heroes.
Okay.
The idea is that it's the everyday people inside of organizations that are working sort of at the bare metal layer of IT and software delivery, whether they're on the software development side of the equation, the IT operations side of the equation, release, or any piece of the equation. Coming together as a team and doing what needs to be done to deliver success and improve outcomes for their organization is really at some level a hero's journey. And inviting those people to come in and talk about the practical reality of what it means to be doing that kind of improvement day in and day out is what we're doing with the Nexus World Tour. And it's a great way to kind of just get into authentic conversations with people about the hard work that's getting done to move organizations forward.
Sure. Now, Matt, two things. First of all, give our audience an idea. Who are some of these unsung heroes, or maybe they're not quite as unsung anymore, but who are some of these heroes that are appearing on the tour?
Well, for example, one who's actually speaking right now is Shannon Leitz from
Yes.
Intuit, who is interesting in many respects, but a good example. I think she likes to describe herself as sort of a security professional who is in fact running a dev team, which in itself might be a little sort of unorthodox, or
To say the least.
some might say orthogonal. But Shannon does a really good job of, as an everyday contributor to an organization like Intuit, explaining on a practical level what kind of hard work and sort of alignment of teammates is required in order to move the ball forward and achieve success. So, none of them are really unsung in that sense, but, the truth of the matter is, we have others besides Shannon's from different customers. We have partners who are speaking. We have, partners of ours, including Zivra, which is an organization that's in talking to large enterprises and senior IT decision makers about the issue of DevOps transformation, and having them kind of come in and sort of share with our Nexus World Tour the conversations that are happening and the types of decisions that are getting made to move larger organizations into kind of the continuous delivery sort of DevOps mindset. So it's the combination of the people and the partners, but collectively that's the way it's going.
Absolutely. Matt, one of the things that I found interesting about the Sonatype Nexus World Tour is it almost seems that every city, while we have some people who maybe were at the city before, there's fresh heroes, if you will, at every city. And the Sonatype team seems to do a great job of gathering the local Nexus users, fan base, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, we're fortunate in the sense that Nexus Repository Manager is the world's most popular repository manager with well over 100,000 installs in organizations around the globe. And our ability to kind of do a tour like this and to create new and interesting groups of heroes, as you say, is in part based on the fact that our repository manager, the Nexus repository manager, is so ingrained in development organizations around the world, and there's really sort of good fundamental hygiene that Nexus repository has been delivering for so many years, just in the form of traditional sort of component management and binary management. But now, as the conversation is sort of shifting and the game is being upped, and organizations are looking to do sort of continuous delivery and better, faster, cheaper software, the opportunity to kind of engage that base in a sort of a slightly different conversation about continuous component intelligence and software supply chain automation, and the principles that Deming teaches with respect to automating the flow of parts through a process to
Mhm.
improve outcomes, allows us to both tap into our Nexus repository base, which is large and well established, and sort of have an interesting, fresh, and meaningful conversation about where the world is today, and honestly where it's going.
If you don't mind me segueing, and I'm going to take us off of the Nexus tour for a second. Just before you came on, we were having a conversation with Andre Pino at CloudBees, and he was talking about how in the Jenkins world, this whole idea of pipelines
Mhm.
and how it is just exploding, no pun intended. And it also is very caught up into the whole containerization and containers and Docker and pipelines. And of course, that kind of plays right into a lot of what you guys are doing with software supply chains and stuff like that. How much are, if you know, how much are containers and that whole kind of pipeline thing? Is that a driver for this, or
Yeah,
not really yet?
I think the simple way to think about this is that it's parts, and with organizations coming to grips today with the reality that software innovation is a key differentiator, and software innovation is the thing that allows organizations to compete and win on a global playing field. And how you do software innovation is a question, and increasingly, more and more people have, you know. Embrace the flow of parts into their software delivery lifecycle to automate faster, in a sense, standing on the shoulders of giants. And whether they're standing on the shoulders of giants in the form of open source components, or they're doing that with containers, or they're doing that with microservices, we're still talking about componentized assets that really do change the nature of software delivery from sort of a development discipline almost into a manufacturing discipline. So whether you call it pipelines, or whether you call it a supply chain, or whatever, the truth of the matter is, the vast majority of modern applications are in fact composed of assembled
Components,
parts,
right?
and 10 or 15 or 20% is compiled code. So it's that proliferation of parts that sort of begets speed, and the desire for better outcomes comes from the ability to automate the flow of those parts, whatever they may be, through that pipeline, as many people refer to it, or that supply chain, as we refer to it. But it's very much the same
Absolutely.
game.
So, and I don't pretend to be as smart as some of the other people, especially some of the folks, the heroes who are talking on the Nexus tour. What it really, to me, is we live in an age of software componentization, if you will, and we've moved away from the everything is a one-off, and a software developer has to write code from scratch to a time of as you say, it's almost assembly line-ish, in terms of putting together the pieces, the right pieces and the right thing. And it's also, though, a perfect storm, right? Because you do have containerization, which gives rise, or enables this. You do have microservices. You do have software supply chain or pipeline or whatever you want to call it, and you also have things like the Nexus repository, where you have this vast, data store, treasure trove of components. Um, it has to radically change the way we're building our apps and our software going forward.
Yeah, I would simply say that the world is clever, and software developers are probably the most clever people in the world.
Mhm.
And we're already there. 30 billion components were
Wow.
served last year out of the central repository, to 9 million Java developers around the world.
Just repeat that number. Look into the camera.
Yeah,
What was
30 billion components,
30
more than
million?
30 billion last
30
year.
billion with a B.
That's right, with a
Wow.
billion, out of the Nexus, out of the central repository to developers. So this idea that we're sort of living in a world where componentization is sort of the new reality is really yesterday's
Yeah.
news. I think what's interesting is how the proliferation of cloud services and the ability to imagine tools that automate the flow of those parts And like everything, it's the world is a treadmill, and you're on the treadmill. And if you're not innovating today, then you're falling behind. So the
Right.
parts game has been established now for quite some time, and open source is here to stay, and it was here to stay 5 years ago, and it's only going to become more of a standard, not less of a standard. And whether that and it's compounded by sort of the rise of containers and Docker and
Microservices.
microservices and the like. So, but that is the game that's already sort of upon us. And now the question becomes, how do you sort of ride that wave? It's a powerful wave that is, if you're not careful, it can consume your organization and cause you a lot of harm.
It become a
But
tsunami.
if you're wise and you're smart and you can automate and develop tool chains and pipelines and supply chains that allow you to surf that wave with intelligence, with efficiency, with knowledge, with best practice, it's amazing how much further you'll be able to progress. And so that's where we're focusing the development of our tools is in taming that wave, if you will. But the wave's already here.
Yeah, no, the wave's here. I think it's ride the wave or die.
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't think you can afford to just stand there, right? It's radically changing, and it's only going to accelerate, I think, as time goes. But Matt, we've already gone over our time. I appreciate it. I'd love to. So we just finished a survey on open source usage. I'll talk to you about offline. But for now, we're going to call it a wrap.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it.
Matt Howard, SVP Sonatype. This is Alan Schimmel at DevOps.com.